President Donald Trump was elected in 2016 in no small part because of his sweeping pledges to halt or curtail immigration into the United States. One of his most significant promises was the vow to construct a 760-mile barrier wall along the U.S. and Mexican border. The promise of this wall, like the rest of Trump's immigration policy, is designed to keep non-American citizens from entering the U.S. borders. And there is no doubt that Trump's intense anti-immigration policy has struck a nerve with a group of American citizens who fear that their country is being overrun with foreign-born criminals or people that are stealing American jobs. In this TED Talk, we want to separate fact from fiction. We intend to examine Trump's immigration policy more closely, as well as explore its current and future impact on both undocumented and legal immigrants, including refugees. We will also answer the question, to what extent does Trump's immigration policy affect immigrants and their well-being? Broadly speaking, Trump's immigration policy can be said to have 4 pillars or significant goals. These goals sometimes overlap, but we believe that it is important to name them separately so that his immigration policy becomes clearer and easier to understand. Probably the best known arm of Trump's immigration policy is his promise to enhance or increase immigration enforcement, especially at U.S. borders. The construction of a wall or steel fence at the U.S.-Mexican border is a milestone of this effort of enforcement. All of the enforcement is designed to make it difficult to enter the United States, as well as remain in the United States if you are a non-citizen immigrant. There is roughly 2,000 miles of natural border between the U.S. and Mexico, and a good part of it is impassable because of mountains and riverways. The U.S. government has already constructed a chain-link fencing across 700 miles of this border. Trump wants to replace and expand much of this fencing with what he calls a huger wall. Earlier in his presidency, he called for a 30-foot wall steel barriers, but later proposals have imagined see-through walls. However the wall is constructed, it is more of a symbolic barrier than a literal one. The wall reassures Americans that the national border cannot be intruded, and it reinforces fears about the contaminating nature of the other, especially the non-European and white immigrant. Much of the controversy that surrounds the wall is centered on the ineffectiveness of this effort. Trump estimates that the wall will cost $12 billion, but many other estimates, including one from the Department of Homeland Security, suggest that the wall will be easily twice that. Others have questioned how much the wall will affect illegal immigration, as many politicians who live in the border states believe that better technology like sensors and drones and more personnel at the border will be more effective. Trump has repeatedly insisted that the wall will also curtail drug smuggling and crime that accompanies it, but that misapprehends how drugs are trafficked into the U.S. from Mexico. Most of it is not brought across the border on foot, but is flown into the U.S. or in some cases transported in tunnel systems that work around walls. Trump's slogan, "Build a wall and crime will fall," is appealing to Americans who are afraid of violence, drug trafficking, and increasingly unsafe communities. This is a real fear that is projected onto Latinx people who are more likely to encounter violence in homes, schools, and gain access to drugs through opiate dealers, and feel unsafe because of communities that do not have enough resources to address poverty, unemployment, and housing, and food insecurity. The wall does not change any of that in the lives of American citizens. In May of 2018, Trump's Department of Homeland Security and the Justice Department implemented a zero-tolerance policy at the U.S.-Mexico border, which means that they will prosecute anyone who enters the border without authorization and will prosecute those people under the crime of illegal entry or re-entry. Prosecuting all of the people who cross the U.S.-Mexico border illegally would be very expensive because it would require more lawyers, judges, people to transport the migrants, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers, patrollers, and space in ICE facilities. For this reason, it has not been fully implemented yet. However, this zero-tolerance policy is what is responsible for separating children from their families at the border. When captured by ICE officers, people crossing the border are taken to detention facilities where they are held while they wait on prosecution. Their children, on the other hand, are kept in separate facilities because they cannot be held legally in criminal custody. This whole process places children and their parents on separate legal tracks, which means that a court does not recognize them as families. These separate legal tracks and forced separation of parents and children make it extremely hard for families to be reunited after the criminal proceedings. Worse, these families are about 1/3 of the migrants apprehended at the border. The Trump administration has implemented yet another way of deterring people from entering at the southern border. In June 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions limited the legal reasons that a person might be allowed to seek asylum in the United States. He dramatically curtailed the number of people permitted to seek asylum from so-called private crimes like gang violence, sexual violence, and domestic violence. This new policy applies to everyone seeking asylum, but it specifically hurts the people coming from the Mexican border because many of them are seeking refuge from domestic and gang violence rather than political persecution. At the same time, a leaked draft of the measure under consideration by the Justice Department would not allow people to seek refuge or asylum from political persecution in the U.S. either. If you make it that much harder for people to seek asylum in the U.S., many Mexican immigrants will be unable to apply. When asylum is more difficult or impossible, people feel forced to try and illegally cross the border. We see this happen in Fresh Fruit, Broken Bodies, when Holmes describes Bernardo's horrific situation in Mexico. Bernardo lived by a mestizo village, and he is Oaxacan. Neighbors would frequently attack him and his family, and they would be forced to defend themselves. The attacks were a response to his land ownership and his political affiliation with MOLT, which is a Mexican political movement, neither of which the neighboring townspeople liked. Bernardo had violence inflicted on him personally, and he also witnessed a great deal of it, like a young girl raped and stabbed, a teacher murdered, a son of a friend of his from Malt was shot, and at least 10 people he knew were killed because of political affiliation or the result of gang violence in the last 2 months of his stay in Mexico. He is afraid to speak because if the wrong person hears him, they will kill him. He is afraid to go out after dark for the same reason. Bernardo says, "I can't go out at night. Even if we need something, not at night, no. There is a lot of danger here," on page 105. Although Bernardo received U.S. citizenship, he was not granted asylum, and his friends will most likely not receive asylum because they are trying to escape gang-related and political violence. Another arm of Trump's immigration policy is the reduction of humanitarian programs. One goal of the Trump administration is to reduce the number of refugees that the United States will accept for resettlement. The Obama administration had previously increased the refugee admission ceiling in response to the worldwide refugee crisis. After citing security concerns about the program, the Trump administration temporarily suspended the program and limited 2017 admissions to 50,000. In 2018, it was then lowered even further to 45,000 refugees, the lowest it has ever been since 1980. However, it is estimated that the actual number of admitted refugees is even lower than this. One of the first moves of the Trump administration was the closure of a refugee and parole program for youth in need of protection in Central America. The purpose of the Central American Minors Program was to reach out to children with legitimate claims for protection and prevent them from undertaking the treacherous journey from Mexico to the USA. Many migrants from South America continue to try and seek asylum in the U.S., and because of their requests are no longer accepted, they now formed a now famous caravan in effort to reach the U.S. border. Unlike press portrayals, these people are not criminals seeking entry into the U.S. These people are primarily victims of gang violence, which has erupted in murder, kidnapping, corruption, especially in Honduras, and drug wars. The South American migrants tried to leave these life-threatening conditions in hope that they can start a different and better future with their families in the U.S. The number of migrants that are expected to reach the border in the caravan totaled 10,000 people. Trump has consistently called these caravans invasions and believes that gang members are using these caravans in cover in order to enter the U.S. He has warned them about our military that's waiting for them. In some cases, the caravans were met with tear gas by police, and other times they were met by protesters holding "Say No to Invasion" signs.
The third pillar of arms of the Trump immigration policy is increasing obstacles for illegal immigration. The Trump administration has made many changes that increase the vetting of potential immigrants that slow legal admissions. Trump issued executive orders promising enhanced vetting that would help prevent the entry of people. Applications from countries who are considered to be high risk are subject to additional interviews with family members. Trump is slowing down the application process. making it harder for immigrants to legally come to the U.S. and get a visa, forcing some immigrants to come over illegally in search of a new start or a better life by crossing the border. In Fresh Fruit Broken Bodies, it states that crossing the border from Mexico to the United States creates financial, physical, and emotional suffering for Cherokee immigrants. They walk for long distances in terrible conditions, climbing and jumping over barbed wire fences, trying to avoid rattlesnakes, and getting speared by cactus spines. This is not seen as a choice, and the immigrants cross the border in order to survive. They want to escape poverty and work to be able to provide for their families. The fourth main pillar of Trump's immigration policy is the ending of DACA. Created by President Barack Obama, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals is an American immigration policy that protects eligible immigrant youth who legally came to the United States as children from getting deported. It provides protection from removal as well as work authorization for an estimated 700,000 unauthorized people that were brought to the U.S. as children. Since his election, Trump has been working hard to try to end the DACA program. In September 2017, he announced the unwinding of the program, and DACA holders could no longer have their 2-year status removed after expiration. When this happens, DACA holders lose protection under the law. Many courts have weighed in on Trump's actions. The federal courts put the decision to end DACA on hold, but another federal court upheld Trump's repeal of it. In April of last year, one more federal court ordered customs and immigration DACA applications. This has created uncertainty in the government, local communities, and families, as it seems that future courts could not continue to shift. Currently, as immigrant communities in the U.S. have tried to stay under the radar because of the ongoing threat of ICE, there's been reports of a dip in crime reporting, including domestic violence. Immigration arrests with no prior criminal convictions have almost tripled. It sends a message to most immigrants that they are being racially profiled. In Fresh Fruit Broken Bodies, Holmes states how in many circumstances, him being white and being an English speaker granted him different treatment from the Cherokee people. Samuel's family and Holmes went to a local Burger King and ordered 2 large fries, but got 3 medium fries instead. Holmes told Samuel and his wife to go back to ask for the right fries, but they explained how they would never ask because the fries wouldn't be given and they would most likely get in trouble. Holmes then went to go ask for the right fries and they were given to him very easily. Holmes says, "As I expected, they give us 4 large fries and apologized kindly, resentfully. My body was treated as though it had and deserved power, whereas theirs has been treated repeatedly as underlings undeserving for respect." Page 36. Race shows power in society because since Holmes is white, the society ranks him higher up than the Cherokee people. The Cherokee people are often discriminated against and treated poorly. Due to Trump's current immigration policy, there will be many impacts on future immigration. One of the most significant impacts will erect an extra barrier for people legally in the United States to remain here. The immigration process is seen as so cumbersome and messy that something as simple as changing your address could ultimately result in deportation. A new guideline that was issued grants customs and immigration officers the right to instantly reject incomplete visa applications and refuse the repeal to add additional information or missing documents. Since the Trump administration is inflicting harsh rules and guidelines for visas, it will prevent future immigrants from coming to the U.S., which will lead to the decline that Trump is seeking.